The reborn Telamon, this unique atlas from the Temple of Zeus in the ancient city of Agrigento in Sicily, is one of the most impressive examples of monumental sculpture. Built in the Doric style in the 5th century before Christ, the temple was among the largest of the ancient world and showcased Greek civilization's power. Telamons served as supports and symbolized titanic strength, representing the force holding up the sky or the heavy weight of the structure. These giant statues, about 7.5 meters tall, were impressive, both in their detail and their size. One of the Telamons was restored and placed in its original location, demonstrating the complexity of the engineering and artistic solutions of the ancient masters. Atlanta is surrounded by myths and mysteries. Some researchers believe that the images of the Titans could reflect ancient myths about the confrontation between gods and giants, and their position in the temple could symbolize their subjugation. Some think this size and shape may have represented extraterrestrial beings the ancient inhabitants believed in. Are these findings really 300 million years old? From time to time, miners find strange artifacts in coal seams that apparently were created by intelligent beings. This raises uncomfortable questions for science, because the age of these layers is estimated at 300 million years. How could objects that were clearly made by hand end up there? Back then, Earth was home only to giant insects and early reptiles, right? Humans, dinosaurs, or advanced technologies weren't present, yet the discoveries still amaze. In 1912, an iron kettle was extracted from a coal seam in Oklahoma, and in 1851, a vase made of zinc and silver was discovered in Massachusetts. With the rock, it was found in being 534 million years old. In Russia, a metal rod resembling a gear rack was found, made of aluminum with the use of magnesium. Its origin is even more mysterious. Aluminum was only discovered in 1825, while the coal in which it was found is over 300 million years old. Scientists found that the metal was impregnated with carbon, which confirms its incredible age. But if that's the case, who made it? Some believe that these findings are traces of a vanished civilization that existed long before us, but was wiped from the face of the planet by a global cataclysm. Others suggest that the objects could have been left behind by aliens or even time travelers. Skeptics, in turn, are convinced that these are either hoaxes or mistakes in dating. There is also a theory that coal was formed not millions, but only a few thousand years ago under the influence of deep gases and pressure. If so, the artifacts might not be that ancient after all. A mineral that no longer exists, this stone weighs only 1.6 carats, but its value is literally beyond estimation. Kyautowite is Earth's rarest mineral, discovered by chance at a market in Myanmar. Scientists found out its composition, and its crystal lattice is not found anywhere else in nature, neither before nor since. The color is amber brown, and its structure looks like an alien object under a microscope, with hollow tubes inside formed by pressure and time. Kyautowite is now housed in the Los Angeles Museum. This is not just a stone, it's a mistake of nature and possibly a trace of ancient geology, a technical event that science doesn't even suspect yet. But what if this mineral is not just a coincidence of nature, but something deeper? What if its composition hides answers to questions we haven't even asked yet? Egypt and the swastika. Studying the Ahnenerbe archives made it clear the Nazis weren't just seeking ancient artifacts, they wanted to insert themselves into a grand past, to craft a narrative portraying the Aryans as direct heirs of ancient civilizations. Egypt was important in this system, not for its pyramids and mummies, but for its symbols and rituals. They called the swastika the Sun Cross. For them, it was not just a symbol, it was a code. The swastika appears in Indian, Tibetan, and Chinese cultures, and in Egypt as an indirect symbol representing the sun's movement and the four directions of the cult. They found confirmation of their ideas in this, sometimes far-fetched, sometimes quite convincing. Before the war, some NSNR researchers were unofficially in Egypt. They were interested in ancient books, burial rituals, ideas about the afterlife, and how the Egyptians connected power, magic, and order. The Nazis saw this as a system, not a religion, but a mechanism of control, as if the ancients knew something that was forgotten, and they came to restore it. I saw expedition photos of people in SS uniforms near temples and stone bas-reliefs with runes. It wasn't just imitation, it was an attempt to create their own new religion, not relying on symbols that inspire power. When Hitler talked about returning to the past, he wasn't referring to Prussia. He looked back millennia to vanished civilizations that left traces, hoping those traces would lead to them. The dam isn't from that era. A stone dam on the Vinalopó River near Elche, Spain, was long thought to be from the Islamic period. It was odd. A huge structure at the mouth, thick walls and channel traces. Everything fit the usual timeline until a new study using optically stimulated luminescence completely changed things. This structure is actually 1,000 years older than previously thought and was built at the end of the 1st century before Christ. In the Roman Empire era, the 130-meter-long, 4-meter-high dam was not just part of the landscape, but a key element of the hydraulic system of the Roman colony of Elche. It served as a regulator and was likely used to irrigate nearby lands. It wasn't a separate structure, but part of a well-designed logical engineering network. In this story, there are no cults, inscriptions, or myths, just calculation, geometry, and clear knowledge of the terrain. The dam was not built for beauty. It wasn't decorated with bas-reliefs or woven into legends. It was built to stand, to channel water where it was needed, to serve the city, and it still works to this day. More than 2,000 years of civilization have passed, languages have disappeared, but the dam has remained in its place. 3 vanished artifacts. When engineer Wayman Dixon descended into the narrow passage inside the Great Pyramid in 1872, he could hardly have expected to stumble upon one of Egypt's strangest mysteries. From a deep ventilation shaft only a few inches wide, he retrieved 3 objects: a stone ball, a copper hook, and a piece of cedar wood. All of them looked primitive, but that's exactly what raises questions. Why were such things hidden in a hard-to-reach shaft, and who put them there, and how? These finds, later known as the Dixon Relics, quickly became surrounded by myths. The stone is perfectly smooth, like a carved hook of a strange shape, looking more like a tool than a relic. But the wooden fragment became the most mysterious part of the story. After being transferred to Edinburgh, it disappeared, simply vanished for decades. Only in the 2020s was part of the wood accidentally discovered in a box among forgotten collections. Analysis revealed an age over 5,000 years, possibly predating the pyramid. Why is this rarely mentioned, and why is no one eager to investigate further? These 3 objects appear to unlock not the sarcophagus, but something older and more terrifying, a secret the pyramid still conceals. Ear crystal skulls. In the antique shops of Paris at the end of the 19th century, perfectly polished skulls made from solid rock crystal appeared. No mention of excavations, just mysterious sellers claiming these were Maya relics that could sing under the moon and open doors to other worlds. The legend soon gained details. They claimed there are 13 skulls that, together, display a star map or contain messages about lost celestial mentors. Mediums claimed the crystal resonates with brainwaves, decoding ancient wisdom, while modern lithotherapy masters sold activation sessions at the price of jewelry. When, in the 1990s, the British Museum and the Smithsonian Institution examined the most famous skulls with a scanning electron microscope, the surface revealed characteristic traces of a rotating tool with a diamond coating. Such a tool would only appear after the 1860s. Additionally, the quartz structures lack internal cracks that would have formed if hand-polished with sand. The artifact was likely made by a modern machine, but one skull was reportedly found in Belize. Mass-produced fakes continue to confuse experts. With no purchase receipts or archaeological records, only previous owners' stories remain. They claimed the crystal was polished over centuries using water drops, quartz dust, and Maya craftsmen's patience. Scientists are nearly sure they're seeing a later copy, but allow for a small chance it's genuine. What if this is truly the work of ancient hands? We just haven't determined what tool was used to create it yet. The sunken port of Cleopatra near the shores of Taposiris Magna, west of Alexandria, Archaeologists found a submerged area with signs of an ancient harbor. Kathleen Martinez's team, along with marine archaeologist Bob Ballard, reports rows of massive foundations over 6 meters high, cemented blocks, column fragments, storage and transport amphorae, and many anchors from Cleopatra VII's era. This set of items typically comes with a working port, docking lines, storage areas, and navigation equipment. In 2022, an underground tunnel, 1,227 meters long, was discovered here, stretching toward the Mediterranean Sea, and inside it were ceramics and objects from the Ptolemaic period. The harbor may have served the city complex, the temple of Toposiris Magna, and Cleopatra's fleet during her reign. This is indicated by the dating and the maritime profile of the finds, but test pits, sediment dating, and linking the structures to the ancient shoreline are needed. If confirmed, we will have rare evidence of what the coastal network near the capital looked like and how it functioned. The Ptolemies not in text but in stone, wood, and iron. We are used to seeing submarines in archival photos, black and white silhouettes, and legends, but now everything is different. Submarines are already being counted as architecture. Multi-beam, sonar, photogrammetry, underwater laser, and a Type 7 or 11 hull appear on screen down to the rivets, revealing details that explain an entire war. What stands out on the real models is the damage to one submarine. Its stern is ripped open like a sardine can. A depth charge exploded near the rudder, blowing the hull plates outward. The crack along the seam clearly shows the shockwave's direction. This is not speculation. 3D reveals the metal's true shape. Another sub has a hole in its bow below the waterline and a nearby cable mark, suggesting it snagged a mine anchor. A destroyer finished it off with several hits. Previously, such events were based on eyewitness reports, but now they're visible. The key detail is the hatches. On many submarines, some hatches are stuck open where crews tried to escape, while others are closed and jammed. Inside, air bubbles and sludge show it sank fast. The propeller marks, conning tower shape, and periscope housing type are noted. These make it easy to connect the submarine to its departure date and last radio contact, revealing how the final patrol unfolded, the base, hunting area, and lost location. In reinforced sections, initial failures can be seen, like a jam after too many torpedoes, a damaged depth rudder, or broken drive, leaving the submarine a stationary target. The hull's condition reveals its position on the seabed, chipped paint, growths, and sediment streaks along the sides. These signs make it clear where the current was pulling, what broke off first, and which elements detached after the sinking. All of this becomes interesting to us, because now we can study old military equipment in great detail, even the ones that are stored deep underwater. Now we can recreate the moment the submarine was lost, show what a naval battle looked like in the 1940s, and compare all of this with the archival documents that we still have. The mysterious steel sanatorium in Cleveland on the shore of Lake Erie began operating in 1928 with a giant steel sphere about 20 meters high and 38 rooms inside. The structure was funded by industrialist Henry Timken at the urging of Dr. Furman Cunningham, an anesthesiologist who believed increased pressure and oxygen could treat many diseases. The building had 5 floors with living rooms, bathrooms, a powerful climate control system, 3 compressors, 2 boilers, a 27-ton ammonia cooler, and filters to control pressure, temperature, humidity, and circulation. Cunningham's method was based on the mistaken assumption that many diseases were caused by anaerobic bacteria and could be treated with oxygen therapy under pressure, even in the year it was open. The American Medical Association's Bureau of Investigation called the project commercial, not scientific. In 1934, James Rent Jr. bought the facility and renamed it the Ohio Institute of Oxygen Therapy. But there was no steady flow of patients. 2 years later, the complex was resold and unsuccessfully tried to operate as a regular clinic. By 1942, the steel sphere was dismantled for metal to meet the needs of the war industry. Cunningham's ideas were not confirmed regarding cancer, diabetes, and universal healing. However, hyperbaric oxygenation was mainly used for decompression sickness, carbon monoxide poisoning, and some tissue healing issues. This is no longer related to the steel sanatorium. holy water from the air conditioner. A funny incident happened at the Sri Banke Bihari temple in Vrindavan, India, which could have happened anywhere. But it stands out in a country with hundreds of gods and temples. Worshippers gathered by an elephant statue where water dripped slowly. They decided that it was holy water from Krishna's feet, but in reality the water was just simple condensation dripping from the air conditioner cooling the temple for people who had never encountered air conditioners before. This explanation was not enough. The devotees insisted this was nectar from Krishna's lotus feet, collected by temple attendants each morning while washing the temple's divine pillars. They had to release an official statement to dispel the myth and warn people not to drink the water. The danger of such water is that fungi and bacteria can form in the air conditioning system, which can easily get into the droplets. This could lead to infections. But it's worth noting that the stomachs of the locals are used to harsh conditions. Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to buy food at street markets. When this incident was reported on television, believers were offended at temple authorities for not warning them sooner. But how can you convince someone who already believes? This task is almost impossible. The famous catman Kim Marco stands in front of the Marco Island Historical Museum building in Florida. A tall statue of a cat-like creature, a replica of a unique artifact that was found in 1896. At that time, a Smithsonian expedition was conducting excavations in a pond known as the Court of the Pile Dwellers, and under a layer of mud they discovered a wooden statuette, a 15-centimeter figure of a catman, which they named Kim Marco, the cat. It is thought to have been carved by the island's indigenous Calusa people. Researchers concluded the figurine predates European arrival due to its anthropomorphic traits and similarity to the Florida panther. The Kim Marco cat is now exhibited at the Marco Island Historical Museum. This artifact is one of Florida's most famous discoveries and is there on a long-term loan provided by the Smithsonian Institution. The Catman statue has become a symbol of Marco Island. It appears on various signs, souvenirs, jewelry, and even in the design of local businesses. Austin Bell, the museum's curator, wrote 9 lives of the famous cat Kim Marco, detailing the discovery's history and its journey through several museums. An out-of-place artifact or out-of-place artifacts are finds that do not fit at all into traditional ideas about our history. They are found in places and layers of the earth where they shouldn't be. The most amazing thing is that given their age and level of complexity, such objects simply could not have been created at a time when, as it is believed, no advanced technologies existed. Official science often declares such finds to be fakes or simply ignores them, but their number keeps growing, and it is no longer possible to turn a blind eye to them. For example, the mysterious Baigong metal pipes in China go deep underground and reach lake shores with an estimated age of 150,000 years. Researchers are baffled by the pipe's iron mineral content and ancient age. Some believe that this is the result of natural processes, but others think that the pipes could be traces of a highly developed civilization or even left by extraterrestrials. Still, the wrought nail, over 350 million years old, remains a mystery. This nail was discovered in Paleozoic-era rock from a time before humans or metalworking existed. How could it have gotten there? Ancient rocks? Some scientists suggest tectonic processes, while others talk about the involvement of previously unknown civilizations. In Provence, fossilized tools were found that could have been made by humans or even from ancient trees. If this is true, such discoveries indicate the existence of intelligent beings who had woodworking skills long before the first known civilizations appeared. Other findings are even stranger. In Antarctica, the Altanin antenna was discovered, which at first appeared to be a high-tech object. However, it was later found to be just a sea sponge. The misconception itself shows how easily we're mistaken by the unexplained. The Pulaski River's traces remain another mystery. Giant humanoid footprints were found next to the dinosaur tracks. This discovery calls into question our understanding of the chronology of life on Earth, because according to the theory of evolution, dinosaurs and humans never coexisted. Other anomalies include Mount Ararat, linked to Noah's Ark, the uncertainly dated Nampa clay figurine, and the Wolfsegg iron, thought to be from prehistoric times. We shouldn't forget about the Tucson artifacts. This is a collection of 31 lead objects found in 1924 near Picture Rocks, Arizona. These artifacts include crosses, swords, and other items engraved with inscriptions in Latin and Hebrew, as well as images resembling medieval symbols. Initially, it was assumed that they were created by ancient Mediterranean civilizations that supposedly crossed the Atlantic in the 1st century. However, later on, many scholars considered them a hoax made in modern times to mislead researchers. In any case, each of these artifacts challenges our understanding of the past and opens the door to new theories and research. Perhaps our history is far more astonishing and mysterious than we imagined. Mysterious Idbaraks. Turkic legends remember a people with a human body and a dog's head, the Idbaraks, in the tales of Oguz Khan. They are on the northwestern edge near Siberia. The name consists of Id, dog, and Barak, a long-haired breed. The description is consistent: dark skin, mottled fur, and a dog's skull. Oguz Khan once retreated before them, went into exile, and later returned and won. He gave the conquered lands to his son Kipchak, ancestor of the Kipchaks. The name Kipchak is linked to a legend of being born in a hollow tree. To understand why dog-headed people appeared in these stories, remember that dogs were helpers and guides to the early Turks, not evil beings. The 12-year cycle includes a year of the dog. In shamanic rituals, they copied its behavior. In myths, the dog Barak carries the shaman upward, and in Altai tales, the dog protects the first people from Erlik, making it their own dog. It's both protection and a spiritual link. In contrast, Idbaraks resemble outsiders, sharing canine traits but as threats and boundaries, not protectors. This approach makes sense. It defines our boundaries and reminds us how to behave abroad. Our neighbors share similarities too: Greek cynocephaly, Indian canine guardians, and European accounts of northern tribes. The pattern is universal. An unusual face signals distance. Some may debate if the origin was a mask, totemic headdress, or unusual neighbors, but tradition doesn't require it. In legends, those on the other side were called Idbaraks. This marked their world's boundary. A skull mosaic in an ordinary house. In a house on one of the streets of ancient Pompeii, archaeologists found a mosaic tile, not very large, only about 40 centimeters, but in meaning, it turned out to be much greater. A human skull is depicted at the center, with a scale above and symbols of power and poverty on the sides, all finely detailed. While it appears to be a philosophical allegory, its meaning is much deeper. This mosaic adorned the dining room wall, where the owner hosted guests as they ate, drank, and talked business. He reminded them that death makes everyone equal. The skull symbolized mortality, the scales fate's balance, and the butterfly above, the soul freed after death. According to the inscription at the entrance, the owner's name was Visoni Primus, a tanner and textile craftsman. An ordinary man, not a senator, not a general, he commissioned an image typically found in philosophical salons or public buildings, seemingly to remind himself and others that wealth and poverty are equally erased. The mosaic lay under ash for almost 2,000 years. When it was found, the colors were preserved as if the work had just been completed. Today it is kept in the Naples Museum. Stone propaganda architecture. If you seek the Reich's language in stone, you'll find it in amphitheaters, not papers. Built in the early 1930s for public gatherings and rituals, they ended up being ideal for controlling emotions. Stone steps, fire, and a voice projecting without a microphone. The most notable Tingstätte sites are on Heidelberg's Heiligenberg and the Berlin Arena, which was then called Dietrich Eckart Bühne, now known as the Waldbühne. Everywhere looks the same: a semicircle, tall backdrop, hidden passages, torch spots, and stone alcoves for musicians and gear. From above, it looks like romantic ruins, but on site you can see the engineering side: neat drainage systems, precise geometry, and spots for placing columns. People become part of the design. Architecture shapes how they stand, listen, and respond together. It's clear how the ritual functioned here. The entrance is a long ribbon along the slope, allowing everyone to unite as they enter. A stone teleprompter on the central axis projects the voice to the sides, making it audible without equipment, as the backdrop reflects the sound. The pockets where flag bearers waited above the lighting and torch circles have extra steps for formations, not for the audience. They're ideal for laying out signs, slogans, or symbols. From above, it's clear. Many myths surround these places, especially about astronomical alignments, like stages and passages catching the solstice. In some locations, there is a coincidence, but you don't need to look for the cosmos where good stage direction is enough. The real magic is in the acoustics and geometry. Standing on the central stone of Heidelberg and speaking normally lets people in the upper rows hear you clearly. It's amazing, though it's simply clever sound reflection. After the war, these venues had varying conditions. At Heidelberg Tinsteite, technical details are clear. A narrow service passage behind the stage, niches for cables and torch holders, and a drainage system in the sidewalls that runs under the stands to the ravine, preventing flooding after rain. In the top rows, marks indicate marching intervals. The spaces between them equal a standard banner's width. The Berlin Waldbühne is unique, featuring a wide orchestra pit, fan-shaped spotlight exits under the stands, and stages made for a frontal view of columns rather than a circular layout. These are two models of the same idea. The stone's geometry creates movement and gathering spaces for people, without rituals or grand speeches. Gaston's tooth. In 1971, French amateur paleontologist Gaston Leroux was digging through Pliocene shore pebbles along the Loire and found a perfectly preserved human molar in the sand. The layer dated back 3 million years, predating the genus Homo. It provided evidence of a lost humanity coexisting with saber-toothed tigers. Newspapers reported on a pre-human civilization, and esoteric enthusiasts linked the discovery to the Atlanteans. Leroux gave tours, showing the enamel under a magnifying glass and asking, "Where else can you see such early tooth decay?" When the sample arrived at the Sorbonne lab, the X-ray revealed a simple truth. It was a modern human tooth, but it was covered with concentric layers of calcite, which embedded it into the Pliocene strontium pebble. The tooth fell out a few centuries ago, dissolved in river water, and settled in an ancient marine deposit, mineralizing nearly into stone. The scientific verdict lessened the excitement but didn't end the myth, since if a tooth survived time, who knows if fossilized skulls of unknown people lie deep below. We just haven't dug them up yet. A tomb that is never opened. Everyone knows about the Sphinx, but almost no one knows. Even partially concreted over. Back in the 1990s, geophysicist Thomas Dobetsky conducted acoustic sounding of the plateau. An anomaly was discovered under the front paws of the Sphinx, a hollow chamber with clear rectangular edges. It couldn't have been a natural formation. It was a room or a tomb or something else. This news rocked the world of alternative archaeology. The claims went even further. Supposedly ancient Egyptian texts mentioned a certain hall of records, and it could be located right there under the Sphinx. One step, and we could have opened the door to a prehistoric past, but instead, there was silence. Egyptian authorities denied excavation permits and closed the site to research. Unconfirmed reports also say the shaft at the Sphinx's base was filled with concrete, just like that, without any comments. The reason is unclear. Maybe not due to nothing being there, but because they know there's a guardian. From Mojo. In the highlands of Peru, in the Mojo region, there stands a stone statue. Not very tall, simple in appearance, but nevertheless evoking strange feelings. At first, it seems like a Tiwanaku-style carved monolith. Clear lines, static pose, hands folded on the stomach. But the longer you look, the more it seems that the figure is somehow out of place, as if it didn't come from this time, or even from this continent. The statue, Mojo Waka, has a base shaped like a cross, similar to the ancient Andean Chicana symbol. Each side represents a world level, upper, middle, and lower. But here, the cross spirals clockwise. This in itself is rare, and may indicate a ritual significance that has been lost over time. However, what draws the most attention is not the style or the symbolism, but the strange similarities. Her pose, with hands folded on her stomach and a direct gaze, surprisingly resembles Moai statues from Easter Island, an earlier stone stele. The composition features identical gestures and restraint from vastly different cultures, separated by time and distance, yet seemingly sharing a common visual language. The Trail of the Amber Room. I have heard about the Amber Room since childhood. The most mysterious World War II loss vanished between fronts. Many theories and clues exist, but little remains. However, last year news emerged that made everyone rethink things. Polish historians said the archives, testimonies, and old transport routes all point to the same conclusion. The Amber Room might have been moved deep into Poland, perhaps to a castle, tunnel, or mine. It hasn't been established for sure, but the fact is that the trail, which was long considered dead, has resurfaced. What caught my attention wasn't even that, but the reaction, as if someone really didn't want this topic to come up again. There were attempts to hush it up, dispute it, push it aside. The more I think about it, the clearer I understand. The Amber Room isn't just a lost artifact. It's a reminder that much more vanished during that war than we realize, and some things remain missing. A story not found in textbooks. Recently, archaeologists discovered that people in ancient Troy drank wine long before the Iliad was written. This is not just a theory or a guess, but real chemical evidence that confirmed that even ordinary people in the territory of Troy not only drank wine, but also used it in their everyday lives. For researchers, this was sensational, as in ancient times only the elite could usually afford wine, but in Troy, it was accessible to all social classes. Research shows that wine was so important in Troy that drinking vessels were found throughout the city, from palaces to modest homes. But what's even more interesting is that the fermentation method used in Troy was so unique that it resembled those of more advanced and developed civilizations of that time. Now, thanks to this research, we can confidently say that Troy was not just a legend, it was real, and its culture was much more complex and progressive than we could have imagined. Knights versus snails. Medieval manuscripts are not only sources of knowledge, but also a real treasure trove of mysterious and amusing illustrations. Special attention should go to marginalia, odd drawings in manuscript margins, and one of the most curious themes found in English books of the 13th and 14th centuries is the battle between a knight and a snail. Why did monks copying books need to depict such an absurd scene? One explanation is simple boredom. Monks amused themselves by adding grotesque drawings to pages, which eventually became an art form. But such illustrations could also have hidden meanings. Perhaps the snail symbolized cowardice. Just like the knight in armor, it hides in its shell. Some historians think this satirizes the aristocracy's slowness or mocks certain political groups. Whatever the case may be, these strange scenes still spark debates among researchers, and the battle between the knight and the snail remains one of the most mysterious medieval miniatures. A 2,000-year-old figgy. Irish archaeologists unexpectedly discovered the charred remains of a 2,000-year-old fig at Drumana Promontory, north of Dublin. This find became important evidence that the Roman Empire, previously thought to have considered Ireland unreachable, still had an influence on its culture. Drumana Promontory was a key point of contact between Ireland and England, which was under Roman rule. Among the finds made by researchers from University College Dublin, figs turned out to be the most surprising. The seeds of the fruit confirmed that it was brought to the island at a time when such exotic fruits were considered a rarity. Figs were previously only found in medieval layers in Ireland, but this is the oldest known specimen. In addition to figs, traces of emmer wheat were found, a grain widely used in Roman Britain, but rare for Ireland. These findings reveal the Romans traded goods and spread their way of life. Archaeologist Christian Baker said that people in Ireland at that time enjoyed emmer wheat bread, olive oil, wine, and also used glass and ceramic dishes, brooches, and beads. Figs, originally grown in eastern Turkey and northern India, reached the Mediterranean through ancient trade routes and became a staple of the Roman diet. Researchers believe that figs and emmer wheat could have been brought through Roman Chester, a major trading hub in Britain. Amethyst vase. This magnificent amethyst vase dates back to approximately the 8th century before Christ and is from the Neo-Assyrian period. Found in a private collection, It is an amazing example of the craftsmanship of ancient artisans working with semi-precious stones. Amethyst was prized for its rarity and beauty. Its deep purple color symbolized luxury, power, and spirituality. Amethyst items in those times were created with great effort, as working with such a hard stone required a high level of skill and special tools. It is likely that this vase was part of ritual inventory or was used to store valuables, possibly incense or oils. The fine polishing and proportional shape indicate that the item was intended for noble owners, such as royal families or high-ranking officials. The Neo-Assyrian civilization was one of the most powerful in ancient Rome, known for its art, architecture, and exquisite household items. Giant Jade Dragon. Chinese archaeologists discovered the largest jade dragon of the Hongshan Neolithic culture. The artifact was found in the Yuanboshan stone tomb, located in Hoshun Aohan, Inner Mongolia. The jade dragon measures 15.8 centimeters in length, 9.5 centimeters in width, and 3 centimeters in thickness, and is a unique find with no analogs in this region. The excavations also revealed architectural remains, fragments of human bones, tombs, hearths, and various artifacts, including jade and painted ceramic items. Among them were tripod cups and basins. Carbon-14 dating showed that the site belongs to the late Hongshan culture and was created more than 3,000 years ago. The Cocknow stone, this massive stone located near the city of Clydebank in Scotland, is covered with intricate carved patterns consisting of spirals, circles, and lines, and is still considered one of the most mysterious archaeological finds in Scotland. Scientists confirmed the stone is about 5,000 years old after many analyses. The Cocknow stone's patterns draw attention for their unique complexity. Some researchers interpret these symbols as an ancient map of the starry sky, suggesting the stone may have been used for astronomical purposes. They believe the spirals and circles may depict stars, planets, or celestial paths, possibly helping ancient Scots track heavenly movements. The stone could also have been used locally in rituals or ceremonies related to worshiping gods or nature spirits. However, there is still no consensus about what role this artifact played in the lives of ancient people. Paleocontact theory supporters suggest that the stone's patterns could be evidence of contact with extraterrestrial civilizations. In their opinion, the complex symbolism of the images may indicate interaction with a more advanced culture, possibly of extraterrestrial origin. In ancient Ephesus, on the western coast of Asia Minor, archaeologists have reconstructed the outlines of the famous Temple of Artemis, one of the 7 wonders of the world. Only column fragments and the foundation remain, but that's enough to grasp the scale. One of the strangest and saddest ancient stories linked to the temple is that of Herostratus. In 356 before Christ, he set fire to the temple not for revenge or faith, but for fame. Herostratus wanted his name to be remembered, even if he had to pay for it with his life. Legend says the temple burned down the same night Alexander the Great was born. The fire destroyed one of the ancient world's greatest structures and became a symbol of senseless destruction. Ephesus authorities banned mentioning Herostratus' name under death penalty, but the ban backfired. His name endured. The historian Theopompus recorded the paradox. The man who destroyed a masterpiece became immortal because of his crime. 20th century archaeologists found evidence of an ancient fire, charred beams and melted roof tile fragments, when excavating the sanctuary's lower layers. And even in these pieces of ash, a strange irony can be felt. The greatest temple of its era was destroyed not by enemies, not by a natural disaster, but by a man who wanted to be remembered. Today, the name Herostratus has become a symbol of destructive fame, showing that history remembers not only creators, but also those who tried to be remembered at any cost. Nowadays, we often see bloggers who are willing to do terrible things for the sake of popularity, but it turns out that people practiced this even thousands of years ago. The flag that no one found. This banner had its own biography, longer than that of many people. The cloth from Munich in 1923, after the beer hall putsch, was stained as a witness to the blood of the fallen. From that moment, the item turned into a relic. At party rallies, it was used to consecrate new standards, and the name of the standard bearer, supposedly only one, so as not to dilute the cult, was memorized by heart. At parades, it led, escorted, and guarded, not with the main crowd. Not just anyone was allowed to touch the cloth. Only those who were permitted to pass on part of its sacred status to their own banners could approach. Next is what any cult tries to forget, but demands preservation and ritual schedules. Fane was kept in Munich on party premises, where it was returned after rituals, with lists, hall numbers, congress trips, and its own storage rules. The fetish lived by a schedule, a ceremonial display, a short ritual, and then the return trip to the cabinet, where it waited until the next important day. The relic's end began before 1945 with the bombings. Archives, offices, halls, everything that seemed eternal had to be hidden, transported, and packed away. Some say the banner was evacuated. Others claim it stayed in Munich until the end. After the city fell, its whereabouts became unknown. Some claim the Allies took it with other party items, and that it's still in their inventories. One version says it's listed under an anonymous number. Another claims the banner burned in the building fire with paper archives. A third version suggests it became a trophy in private hands, was cut up, and dispersed as a historical souvenir. Why did they give up such a sacred object so easily? At collapse, sanctity no longer protects. When the legend fades, the artifact is reduced to just fabric and a pole. Security measures vanish overnight, and without a clear label, the item becomes ordinary. Thus, the flag that was used to build the cult for decades dissolved among boxes, safes, fire, and foreign hands. Over the post-war years, the flag appeared repeatedly in newspapers, eyewitness accounts, and auctions with original fragments. None of these claims held up to scrutiny. Either the fabric is new, the paint is from the wrong era, or the origin story fails immediately. In this rare case, what's missing says more than any exhibit. The flag they tried to make eternal did not outlast the institution that made it. What remains are photographs, ceremony protocols, the names of the flag bearers, and emptiness where the object once was. The unconventional metal of Egypt. A new study has shown a simple fact. In the Middle Kingdom, around 2000 to 1650 before Christ, Egyptian craftsmen deliberately made bronze with arsenic. A special additive was detected in the slags and melts. Spices contain high arsenic levels. This isn't an accidental impurity from the ore, but a deliberate addition to make the alloy harder, keep the edge longer, and reduce wear. A team from the Czech Academy of Sciences, along with colleagues in Cairo and France, conducted the analyses. The results showed that bronze composition was consistently controlled, indicating workshops had steady raw material supplies and a defined technological process, rather than making strong bronze by random trial. There is also a side conclusion for scientists. The lead that came into the smelting process together with space can mix isotopic indicators, which affects the determination of the origin of the copper. In a number of studies, the importance of mines for launching rockets is overestimated. In Laos's Shankuang province, thousands of person-sized stone jars with walls up to half a meter thick are scattered around. Local legends say these are giant's cups used to brew rice wine after defeating demons. The first 19th century French explorers were puzzled. There are no lids, some bottoms are gravel, and some jars are carved from granite quarried dozens of kilometers away. After World War II, the legend grew. American pilots mistook the jars fields for stone rockets and dropped bombs on them. Excavations in the 2016 S and 2020s explained the discovery, but left several questions unanswered. Around some of the jars, skeletons, glass beads, and bronze discs were found. Traces of Iron Age burial rituals, roughly from 500 before Christ to 500 AD. Apparently, the bodies decomposed in the open air before their bones were moved into these large urns. Exactly how the inhabitants carved these multi-ton jars and moved them across the mountains is still a mystery. No metal tool marks are on the rocks, and the polishing looks like it was done with giant sandpaper. We know their ritual purpose, but not who or what tools shaped these boulders into perfect pots. Artifacts that are not shown. You might be surprised, but not all archaeological finds make it to museum displays. Some disappear even before official documentation. Press releases aren't written about them. They're not shown on television. They don't even make it into scientific catalogs. They're either lost or hidden. Sometimes it's by order from above, sometimes to avoid causing problems, and sometimes because no one wants to explain what it even is. A former Cairo museum assistant once accidentally mentioned a 1970s expedition about a discovered copper disc. Symbols on its surface didn't match any known script. The object was stored and lost a month later. Later, photos surfaced of the disc and what appeared to be a map of a different starry sky. There is even evidence that in burials from the 5th dynasty, objects made of strange alloys that couldn't be analyzed were found. An archaeologist kept a copy of the report, saying, "This isn't bronze, gold, or silver. It's something else." Their current whereabouts are unknown. Some might say this is a myth, but then why is access to the Cairo Museum storage closed to most researchers? Why can't even Egyptian scientists get in there without special permission? These items could explain a lot or cast too much doubt on things. At the bottom of the Madura Strait near the island of Java, archaeologists found something no one expected. Not a sunken ship, not artifacts, but an entire ecosystem. The earth layers contained Homo erectus remains, including 140,000-year-old skull fragments, evidence of life, giant bull bones, turtle shells, and broken bones, showing marrow extraction. This is more than an ancient settlement. It's a piece of a lost continent that once linked the islands to the mainland. Scientists call it Sundaland. Today it is underwater, but back then it was plains. Something like an Asian savanna with rivers, forests, and herds of large animals. Archaeologists found processing marks on animal bones like those made by mainland Homo erectus, though it was previously believed Javanese groups lacked these skills. Now it's clear that there was contact between the populations and cultural exchange as well. People shared hunting methods, ways of butchering carcasses, and processing shells with each other. This speaks not only about technique, but also about memory and the transmission of knowledge. In addition to traces of hunting, remains of mollusks and river sharks were found. Evidence suggests this was once a rich, vibrant landscape with humans in the ecosystem, but now it's all at the bottom. Sundaland sank underwater tens of thousands of years ago, silently and without leaving cities or temples. Without occasional discoveries on the seafloor, we wouldn't even know it existed. It reminds us that huge pieces of history can disappear not because of a catastrophe, but because of time. And all that's left is a fragment of bones, cooled in the silt, a celebration that is no more. I used to think the Nazis only rewrote history, but I later realized they changed everything, even Christmas. In the early 1930s, Germany launched a campaign to remove Christian and Jewish roots from holidays. Christmas, a major family holiday in Europe, became an issue for the Third Reich. Christ, Mary, angels, the star in Bethlehem didn't align with Aryan supremacy ideology. They kept the form, but changed the content. The baby Jesus vanishes from postcards, replaced by the sun symbol. The Christmas tree becomes a tree of light, decorated with SS runes, iron crosses, and solar symbols instead of balls and stars. Santa Claus becomes the ancient Germanic Odin, a bearded horseman who brings order instead of joy. Even carols are changed. The tunes remain, but lyrics are altered. Silent Night becomes a hymn to the Third Reich. The Nazis didn't just alter details, they reshaped collective memory. So children grew up with holidays focused on strength, purity, and the nation instead of love. This isn't just ideology, it's a takeover of consciousness through fairy tales, shaping feelings before knowledge. I saw old German postcards, greetings with runes, and Christmas trees with the SS emblem. None of it was a parody or fake. It was a holiday, but without faith, forgiveness, or meaning. A holiday that no longer exists and maybe shouldn't. Under the church where it all began, the Church of the Holy Sepulchre in Jerusalem, one of the most revered places in the Christian world, it is believed that Jesus was buried here. But for a long time, archaeologists debated how much this actually matches the biblical description. Scientists from the University of Rome changed everything when they dug under the church floor and found remains of an ancient garden, not a tomb or artifact. Soil layers between stone walls, terrace remains, a cultural layer, and notably grapevine and olive tree pollen. All of this matches the text from the Gospel of John. In the place where he was crucified, there was a garden. If radiocarbon analysis confirms the age, it will be the first direct archaeological confirmation from the New Testament text. Exactly, it's physical, not theological or symbolic. Also, during excavation, they found an ancient marble altar that vanished in a 19th century fire. It had been in the church the whole time, just facing the wall. On the front was tourist graffiti. On the back, a unique mosaic using a technique known only to Vatican craftsmen. No sensationalism or missions, just facts. But sometimes those facts speak louder than any legend. The metal rod. How can we explain this mysterious artifact? In the Mazong Mountains of China, collector Jilling Wang found a threaded metal rod, like a screw, inside a stone. But what's most strange is that solid rock formed around it, which suggests that the find could be millions of years old. Some have suggested that it's a meteorite with an alien artifact inside, while others believe it's an ancient man-made object that, for unknown reasons, ended up in the earth and turned into a fossil. Skeptics, however, think it's just a rare natural formation, and the screw is actually a fossilized marine organism. Similar discoveries have been made worldwide. Is this a coincidence or proof of ancient, unknown technology? For now, this artifact remains one of the most mysterious archaeological enigmas. A black granite slab. Heraklion, a major ancient Egyptian port, vanished underwater after a 1st century before Christ earthquake. People long thought it was just a myth, until the French archaeologist Frank Godiot discovered the lost city in the early 2000s in Abu Kirbe, near the modern coast of Egypt. The most remarkable find was a massive black granite slab, on which the name of the city and details of its connection with the ancient Egyptian gods were inscribed. Archaeologists found the slab, plus dozens of sunken ships, well-preserved statues, temples, and many artifacts like jewelry, coins, and personal belongings. Excavations continue, and each find reveals Heraklion's importance in trade and religion. The city now underwater reminds us how natural disasters can permanently alter history. Builders in Malta accidentally stumbled upon an ancient tomb about 2,300 years old. In September, workers installing new water lines near a hospital in Birkirkara found a chamber carved into the rock. Later, archaeologists confirmed that it was a Punic tomb. During subsequent excavations, the central shaft of the tomb and 3 burial chambers were discovered. The entrances to them were sealed with original stone slabs. Archaeologists saw skeletons and artifacts through narrow gaps. Inside, bones were arranged in order alongside urns of ashes. The bones were likely moved to allow new burials. A total of at least 14 burials were found in the 3 chambers. The remains have already been moved to the laboratory for further analysis. Archaeologists plan to conduct radiocarbon dating and DNA analysis. To learn more about the Punic community behind this tomb, the Punic civilization, or Carthaginian Republic, was a major Mediterranean power until the Romans conquered it around 150 before Christ. An unknown work by Mozart, a piece by the famous composer Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart, had been kept for over 100 years in the libraries of Leipzig, and was recently discovered during work on a new edition of the Köchel catalog. This catalog, compiled by the International Mozarteum Foundation, is a reference for Mozart's works. In Salzburg, a serenade titled Serenade 90 lasting 12 minutes was found. It was probably written in the mid or late 1760s, when Mozart was between 10 and 13 years old. Ulrich Leisinger, the head of research at the foundation, noted that the style of the piece indicates an early stage in the composer's work, adding that at 17 he would not have written such music. It's impossible to prove authorship completely. Leisinger says the work's similarity to other Mozart pieces from that time, and his name on the sheet music show it's authentic. The discovered composition was first presented at the International Mozarteum Foundation in Salzburg and performed at the Leipzig Opera by Zoras Kehrer. The large megalithic complex of Zoras Kehrer, which is also called the Armenian Stonehenge, is one of the most mysterious ancient structures in the Caucasus. This ancient monument, located in the south of Armenia, consists of hundreds of vertically installed stones, some of which reach several meters in height. Of particular interest are the stones with holes in the upper part, which attract the attention of researchers and lovers of mysticism. Zoroaster dates back to approximately the 6th millennium before Christ, which makes it one of the oldest structures of this type. Proponents of the extraterrestrial civilization theory suggest these holes might have been used to observe stars or communicate with aliens. They claimed that the precision of the hole's placement and the orientation of the stones may indicate astronomical or some other more complex functions, which could not have been accessible to the ancient inhabitants of Armenia without outside help. However, there is no scientific evidence for these theories. Most researchers believe that the Armenian Stonehenge was an ancient observatory used for observing celestial bodies, or it was a place where rituals and ceremonies were held. This ancient monument continues to attract the attention of researchers and tourists, inspiring the search for answers about its true role in the lives of ancient civilizations. The dagger from Fanyo. During construction work in the north of Hungary, in the village of Fanyo, archaeologists found an iron dagger that is more than 3,000 years old. The weapon lay in an ancient burial beside pottery and jewelry remains. This alone isn't unusual. Such items are often found in the Bronze Age, but this specimen proved to be special. The blade is made from meteoritic iron. Analysis revealed a nickel and cobalt ratio unique to extraterrestrial alloys. The weapon was made from a fragment that fell from the sky, dating to the 13th century before Christ, long before people learned to smelt iron from ore. This means that meteoritic metal was the only source of iron at that time, a rare, expensive, and almost sacred material. Such items could belong only to the elite or priests. Similar daggers have been discovered in regions from Mesopotamia to Egypt, with the most famous from Tutankhamun's tomb. They are all made the same way: forged metal, cut and hand-polished, not melted. Scientists believe that weapons made from celestial iron were seen as a sign of a special connection with the gods. At that time, there was no way to explain the origin of this metal, so it was valued not for its strength, but for its origin. Correct the map. The African Union suggests replacing Mercator maps in schools and official settings. This projection stretches high latitudes and compresses areas near the equator, making Africa look smaller on a flat map than it actually is. This distorts how the continent's scale is shown in textbooks and media. Africa, No Filter, and Speak Up. Africa have joined the effort. Together with the company Fix the Map, they are promoting the Equal Earth 2018 Equal Area Projection, where the areas of countries are shown accurately. The idea is simple: to make it the basic standard in school curricula, and then expand its use further. Don't ban Mercator for navigation. It's useful for education and stats, but equal area maps are more accurate. In 2018, Google switched the desktop web version to a 3D globe view, while the mobile app still defaults to Mercator. Because of this, stretched latitudes are still found on everyday maps. When real areas matter, it's better to use equal area projections, like Equal Earth. The Shigir idol in Russia was discovered in 1890 when workers were extracting peat from the Shigir bog in the Urals, and instead of peat they raised a pine log on which zigzags, strokes, and 7 strange masks looked in different directions. The first radiocarbon testing in the 1990s already gave a staggering 9,500 years, and after a repeat accelerator mass spectrometry analysis in 2021, the age increased to 12,100 years. That's twice as old as Stonehenge and the pyramids. The rich metriosin acid preserved the layer better than a sarcophagus. The wood even retained traces of flint tools that people in the Stone Age used to carve into living pine. The pattern on the idol, everyone explains it in their own way. Some say that the horizontal notches divide the layer into 3 layers of the world, and the 7 faces are spirits guarding each level. Others interpret the zigzags as the path of time. From bottom to top, you can see the path of the tribe after the glacier melted. There's also a version that it's a star map. The pattern resembles the summer constellation over the Urals many thousands of years ago. But the main question is why? The statue was broken. drowned in a swamp and pressed down with stones. If it was just an ordinary totem, there would be no need to destroy it. Maybe the ritual needed killing the idol. Scientists have only determined the technique to start a new cycle, heating silicon blades in fire to burn through wood, then scraping the lines smooth. X-rays now reveal hundreds of these marks beneath the bog's thick crust. However, the reason for this remains unknown, as there are no nearby settlements or similar figures. It's as if the creators hid the main work of their era, and only a lonely fragment of the unknown has reached us. Africa and Israel. Archaeologists explored Tel Malhata in Israel's Negev desert, a site linked to the biblical city of Maladah. Among the finds from the 6th century near-Christian burials, they discovered something unexpected: 5 hand-carved figurines made of ebony. The material is Ceylon ebony, which grows only in southern India and Sri Lanka. That alone is a mystery, but what is most surprising are the faces. The figurines show male and female torsos with expressive faces, broad cheekbones, flat noses, and high foreheads. Researchers are sure that these images have African features. On their heads are massive headdresses with holes in them, possibly to wear the figurines as pendants or amulets. The burials themselves are Christian. Nearby were glass vessels, jewelry made of bronze and stone, and alabaster items. And among all this, there were figurines that clearly come from another culture and another world. This isn't just a trade item, it held meaning. These could be images of ancestors or symbols of their homeland, kept even after converting to a new faith. Byzantine Palestine was a crossroads for routes from Africa, Arabia, and India, with many caravans, ships, and merchants passing through. These figurines may have traveled hundreds of miles, passed through many hands, and ended up here among the tombstones. For archaeologists, this rare find shows how deeply cultures intermingled. A holy relic, a Reichsmarschall, the name of the Garen estate. This is not a play on words, but a monument to one woman. Karin Axelina Hulda Falk, a Swedish noblewoman, died in 1931. Göring adored her so much that he built an entire world around her memory. A house museum dedicated to his life was built in the Spreewald forest, featuring hunting halls, collections, and Karin's mausoleum. Here, love becomes architecture, the holy relic of the Reichsmarschall. The story feels unreal. Karin is first quietly buried with honors in her homeland. Later, as Göring's political career rises, her remains are moved to a specially prepared burial room in Germany. Karin Hall, a stone slab, a niche for the sarcophagus, a torch, hunting emblems and coats of arms, inscriptions about loyalty. He brings guests there as if it were his personal temple. In his speeches and interviews, Karin represents pure love that he preserves forever. For propaganda, it was a gift, a marshal who avoids drinking and partying, honoring his wife's memory. A troubling story begins in spring 1945. As the front nears Berlin, Göring orders Karin Hall destroyed to keep it from the Russians. Before the explosion, the sarcophagus is opened and the remains are reportedly hidden in a nearby forest. Others claim they are moved in a communications vehicle to a shelter, with the location changed twice in a week. Years later, when they try to reconstruct the route, they find not one spot but a series of secret burial sites. In this confusion, legends are born. Some say the ashes were dissolved in a lake, others that the sarcophagus was stolen by looters. They mistook a copy for the original. The more people recount the event, the clearer it is that each has their own ending. There's also a grounded story about Karin Hall. After the war, stone portals, stair steps, and panels from the hunting halls were taken apart and used for houses and sheds. Police reports mention unmarked marble slabs, and carved railings were removed from the annex. The mausoleum is gone, but its details remain nearby, now part of ordinary homes. Karin's remains are finally found. Since the 1930s, official reburial has required examinations, comparisons, private letters, and lengthy bureaucracy. Notes appear in the newspapers, asking whether the family really got her back. They say, yes, the documents match, but the residue of legends remains because the story had been surrounded by rumors for too long. As a result, the fate of the woman who lived with Göring for years becomes a post-war mystery. Where was she buried in 1945? Who moved her? And why was her burial site changed? inside, everything served this cult. A room for her letters and photos, a locket with her name, portraits of Karen in every hall, select guests quietly visiting the mausoleum before hunts, and even the estate's name, Karen Hall, as a seal on each invitation. Personal history turned into a routine. The date of death was commemorated, and any important meeting began at the sarcophagus. Hollow Earth, the last door. If someone had told me about this 10 years ago, I would have just smirked. Vikings, Antarctica, the underground world, Nazis, and those who went inside the planet all sounded like wild science fiction. As I dig deeper into documents, diaries, and declassified reports, I realize this wasn't just nonsense. It was part of an ideological construct. According to one theory, the Nazis believed in the existence of a hollow Earth, a space inside the planet where an ancient civilization was preserved, the paradise of Agartha, the inner world. Interpretations differ, but the essence is the same. Escape, destruction, and time. Archives mention Antarctic expeditions, planes vanishing without a trace, and pilots reporting a mysterious glow coming from below, not the sky. Some ideas began with the Ahnenerbe. Others emerged later among those fleeing. Who created them is irrelevant. What matters is how these myths fit the worldview, not as a fairy tale, but as a refuge. The rare giant book before you is one of 12 giant books from the 18th century written in Spanish. Its size is impressive, almost a meter long. These books were created for religious ceremonies and contain detailed scripts of worship services. Leather binding, wooden covers, pages made from tanned animal skin. All of this made the book not only durable, but also a symbol of the church's grandeur. Such manuscripts were intended for use in temples, where clergy and the choir could read the text from a distance, which is why the letters are so large. Today, this rarity is housed at the National Autonomous University of Mexico, where restoration scientists work to preserve its original form. These books offer a glimpse into the past, showing what liturgical texts looked like and the attitude toward writing in colonial Latin America. In Syria, archaeologists have found the world's oldest alphabet, which is over 4,000 years old. This unique discovery was made in the tomb of el-Mara, one of the oldest cities in the Middle East. Clay cylinders engraved with symbols date back to 2400 before Christ, making them about 500 years older than all known alphabets. According to researchers, the inscriptions on the cylinders were probably used as labels to indicate the contents of the vessels, their owners, or their origin. Although these symbols have not yet been deciphered, radiocarbon analysis has confirmed their age, dating back to the early Bronze Age. It was previously believed that the alphabet originated around 1900 before Christ in Egypt or its surroundings, but these discoveries force us to rewrite history. The alphabet was a revolution in writing, making it accessible to people beyond the royal nobility. It changed communication, thinking, social interaction, and knowledge sharing. The discovery followed 16 years of excavation by an international team. In addition to the cylinders, the tomb contained skeletons, gold and silver jewelry, a spearhead, ceramics, and utensils. These discoveries show how ancient cultures developed writing, laying the foundations for modern languages, ruled even after the death of the Inca, and had a unique attitude toward their deceased rulers, considering them not simply dead, but continuing to live and rule even after death. Mummy rulers were preserved and honored as if alive, owning lands and wealth. Their estates were still managed by servants, and the mummies took part in key rituals and meetings. It was believed that these rulers were able to give advice and influence the life of society, remaining the eternal masters of their lands. Over time, this caused problems, as large areas were controlled by the dead, making it harder to distribute resources and manage land for the living. The mummy rulers' influence challenged Inca society, particularly with limited resources. The Incas balanced honoring ancestors with the needs of the living, making their culture unique and symbolic. This shows how spiritual and practical life were closely connected among the Incas. Bronze artifacts in Turkey. In the ruins of the ancient Ayanis castle located in present-day Turkey, Archaeologists discovered bronze shields and a helmet that are about 2,700 years old. These artifacts, found under a 20-meter layer of debris, were created during the time of the Urartian kingdom and were likely used for ceremonial purposes to honor the god Kaldi, the protector in war. Ayinis Castle was built as a fortress and royal residence during the reign of King Rusa II in the 7th century before Christ. However, it stood for only 20-25 years before it was destroyed by an earthquake. Recently discovered bronze shields and a helmet were found in the ceremonial hall of the castle. The decorations on the helmet and the intricate patterns on the shields confirm that they were used in religious rituals. Previously, other bronze items were found at this site, many of which were dedicated to Kaldi, the chief god of the Urartians, who was believed to protect them during battles. Despite minor damage, the artifacts are well preserved, and restoration will help fully recover them. Ayinis Castle continues to be the richest source of Urartian-era bronze artifacts in Turkey, and each discovery provides more information about the culture of this ancient kingdom. The mystery of the Antarctic monolith. In 2020, in a remote part of Antarctica at a depth of more than 2 kilometers, researchers discovered a mysterious object that was named the Antarctic monolith. This object, a rectangular stone slab about 3 meters high and 1.5 meters wide, was found using an ice-penetrating radar used to map the landscape beneath the ice cover. The strangest part began when scientists started studying the monolith. The surface of the stone was covered with intricate geometric patterns and geoglyphs that were strangely similar to ancient symbols found in different parts of the world, including South America, Africa, and Asia. Analysis of the material showed that the stone has no analogs among the known rocks of Antarctica, which means it came there from somewhere else. In addition, the monolith had unusual magnetic properties. Instruments detected a weak but constant magnetic field around it. Charred remains of organic materials were found near the monolith, which, according to scientists, could have been ancient plants or even the remains of living creatures that lived millions of years ago. These organic materials, encased in ice, could provide unique data about the ancient ecosystem of Antarctica when it was part of the supercontinent Gondwana. Some researchers suggest that this could be evidence of a highly developed civilization that existed long before humans appeared, while others claim that it is potential proof of contact with extraterrestrial beings. A book made of leather in Egypt. Restorers are working with one of the oldest Quranic manuscripts, which is over 1,200 years old and weighs almost 80 kilograms. This is not a scroll or an ordinary book. It's a giant volume of 1,087 sheets, each made from tanned animal skin. The ink has darkened. The text is barely readable, but each handcrafted letter is incredibly precise, like a pattern. Scholars believe this manuscript dates to the 8th century and was likely made in an early Islamic center like Kufa or Basra. Restorers spend years cleaning, reinforcing, and repairing each page under a microscope. Experts note that despite its age, the parchment structure is almost intact. This is one of the rare cases when an artifact has been preserved not because of the climate, but because of its size. The enormous weight and density of the pages literally sealed the text from the inside. For Muslims, this book is not just a monument of faith, but a part of the history of writing. In it, you can see the transition from ancient Arabic script to a more familiar style, as well as how religion turned text into art. The underwater portion of Tipasa, known as the Algerian Atlantis, is being studied as thoroughly as the shore ruins. Divers, marine archaeologists are documenting amphorae, cisterns, storage niches, and notably a pier carved into the rock that appears engineered rather than natural. These fragments reveal a port that was active from the 4th century before Christ to the 3rd century AD. The finds indicate regular trade, not just occasional sea dumping. United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization urges broader protection for the water area since surf erosion threatens the cultural layer. And without official status, the site risks heavy diving, and then we'll lose even what we've managed to see. The team is retrieving artifacts spotted back in the spring and is exploring the dark outlines of the structure with new equipment. Only repeated dives and deposit analysis will give a final answer. Before us is a sunken city swept away by water, or the lower level of an ancient harbor now beneath the waves. I'm fascinated not by the word Atlantis, but by exploring how a real port operated across Phoenician, Roman, and Byzantine eras. If we manage to record the layout of the docks and cisterns, we will finally understand what the coastal hub looked like, one that the sources are silent about, but the sea still preserves. The Ark of the Covenant in the Ethiopian city of Axum, behind the thick walls of the Church of St. Mary, there is an object guarded that the locals call the true Ark of the Covenant, a gold-plated acacia chest with 2 carrying poles and a lid with winged figures. Only Monarch, the guardian, may enter the sanctuary. Pilgrims see only a shadowy figure under a cover and hear tales of lightning striking those who touch it unblessed. Some enthusiasts view the Ark's description as a primitive electrical device, a gold-covered wooden box resembling a capacitor with winged tops that could serve as contacts. In our time, people have even tried to create similar models, and they really did produce a weak voltage from accumulated static charge. Skeptics argue that in terms of its size, the Ark is no different from an ordinary portable box for scrolls. The sparks described by pilgrims may have simply been static electricity from the dry mountain air. It's impossible to verify these theories for now. No one has opened the relic, and X-rays and wood analysis are prohibited while the debates continue. Legally, there might be a regular reliquary behind the closed door, or a device we haven't identified yet. The singing sarcophagi of the Serapeum. Beneath the sands of Saqqara lies a 300-meter-long gallery, the Serapeum. In its side niches stand 40 granite boxes, each weighing over 60 tons. Egyptologists call them sarcophagi of sacred Apis bulls, but inside they're nearly empty, with only a few bone fragments left. Mainly, it's about the acoustics. When Massachusetts acousticians used a low-frequency generator that year, something remarkable occurred. Inside one box, the granite created a pure 110 Hz tone, matching the human chest's resonant frequency. If you stand inside, the sound literally vibrates in your bones. Ancient priests could have used this to put themselves and possibly bulls into an altered state. But why are the lids half a meter thick and polished inside like mirrors? One hypothesis suggests the boxes weren't tombs, but resonators that amplified Earth's vibrations. The polished inner surface reflected sound, creating repeated standing waves. Some researchers suggest that the complex might have contained an entire sound organ, a system of chambers tuned to different frequencies. If so, the Serapeum isn't a cemetery, but an ancient acoustic energy lab. The Glozell Tablet. In 1924, clay tablets with mysterious symbols and images were discovered in the small village of Glozell in France, sparking heated debates in the scientific community. These artifacts, found by a young farmer named Emile Frat, turned out to be so unusual that it was impossible to link them to any known ancient civilization. The tablets contain symbols and images reminiscent of ancient scripts, but their origin and meaning remain unclear. Some researchers have hypothesized that the Glozell tablets could be evidence of a lost or unknown culture that developed in this region thousands of years ago. Another, more radical theory suggests that these tablets could be traces of extraterrestrial intervention, although there is very little evidence to support this. However, the tablets' authenticity is still in doubt. Since their discovery, scientists have conducted numerous studies to determine whether they are genuine ancient artifacts or skillful forgeries. To this day, neither version has been definitively confirmed, and the Glozell tablets remain one of the most mysterious archaeological discoveries of the 20th century. Why did the Vikings need the Arctic? The Vikings undertook remarkable sea expeditions in search of precious ivory, reaching the most remote northern regions of the Earth. New genetic studies of 31 ivory artifacts found in European museums show that they reached Greenland and the Arctic, interacting with local peoples such as the Tunit and their predecessors, the Tunit. Almost half of these walrus ivory artifacts come from animals that lived in regions between northwestern Greenland and Arctic Canada. This indicates extensive trade driven by the high demand for ivory in medieval Europe. Archaeologist Peter Jordan from Lund University believes that these findings raise questions about how small Greenlandic communities could organize such large-scale expeditions. Greenlandic sailors likely waited for the thaw to open up a narrow 10-week window for hunting and trading. There is no direct evidence of Viking contact with North America's indigenous peoples, but scientists consider it possible. Research shows that the Vikings were not only farmers and settlers, but also forward-thinking traders and strategic resource extractors. The high demand for ivory may have led to the over-exploitation of resources, which ultimately caused them to leave Greenland in the 14th century. The Spanish Stonehenge is an impressive megalithic monument located on the banks of Spain's Tagus River. It's estimated to be 7,000 years old, making it 2,000 years older than Stonehenge and older than the Egyptian pyramids. The complex has over 100 upright granite stones arranged in circles and ellipses. This site is officially called the Guadalperral Dolmen, and its purpose is still unknown. Scientists believe it may have been used for rituals, as a temple, or as an astronomical observatory. The stones are positioned to align with the sun's location at specific times of the year. This confirms that the ancient builders had profound knowledge of astronomy. The dolmen remained underwater for a long time due to a dam built in 1963. A recent drought let archaeologists and researchers re-examine this amazing site. What inspired ancient people to create such a grand structure? The secret that was known in the CIA. In 2002, declassified CIA documents were made public, and one of them was simply called the Report on Noah's Ark. It mentions a strange object on the slope of Mount Ararat, a formation resembling the hull of a huge ship. Rumors about this place had been circulating since the mid-20th century, but here's what's odd. The CIA did surveillance with reconnaissance planes, then later used satellites, all for the sake of this anomaly. According to the official version, nothing special was found in the images, but dozens of requests to publish the footage, especially from 1974, were denied. Why hide the images if they're empty? Later, researchers took soil samples here and found marine organisms. But Mount Ararat is at an altitude of 4,420 meters. Does this mean that water really was here? The very same water from the biblical flood? It may seem like coincidence, but there have been too many for too long. People avoid this place. 4.6 million shells. In 1835, a resident of the town of Margate in Kent, England, was digging a small pond in his yard, a typical place for ducks. Nothing unusual until the ground suddenly gave way. He discovered a 30-meter tunnel leading to an underground chapel, where the walls, ceiling, arches, and floor were all covered in shells, leaving everyone speechless. Not tens of thousands, but millions. Researchers counted about 4.6 million seashells, oysters, mussels, scallops, collected from the coastal waters of Kent. The main mystery is who did this and when. The style looks medieval due to the chapel's Gothic arches. The grotto may have been dug in the 18th or 19th century when wealthy eccentrics liked secret rooms and underground chambers. The construction date is unknown. The shell pattern covers about 190 square meters, with each fragment laid by hand. Today, the privately owned grotto is open to visitors. For nearly 200 years, no one has answered the main question. Is this an ancient cult object, or just the whim of a wealthy man who wanted to leave a century-old mystery? The Anabar Diamond Needle. In the spring of 2014, at the Anabar Placer in northern Yakutia, Russia, a gold prospector noticed not an ordinary grain of sand in his pan, but a tiny transparent needle the length of a pinky fingernail. Diamonds usually form with facets, but this one was a perfect cylinder with no edges. It was called the sewing needle of the dinosaur era. At the Yakutsk Institute, laser spectroscopy and electron microscopy confirmed the sample was a diamond, but its surface had a thin film of nitride, titanium, and cobalt specks. The protective layer, used to coat artificial technical crystals grown by the chemical vapor deposition method, helped identify the source by the alloy's marking. In the late 1990s, The Yakutsk Research Institute made diamond probes thermocouples for measuring the temperature of steel. During testing, the ladle smelter's probe cracked and was discarded. Spring floods eventually carried it into an ancient clay layer where the prospector later found it. Scientists quickly determined its true origin, but the story turned into a local legend. And every spring, gold diggers hope to find another artifact like that, a skull of the wrong type. When archaeologists started systematically opening tombs in southern Egypt and Nubia in the early 20th century, they noticed something odd. Some of the skulls they found did not match human anatomy. Yes, they had eye sockets, a jaw, and a parietal part, but all were abnormal. Elongated occipits, oversized cranial vaults, and missing sutures typical of normal skulls. Some skulls were so elongated that they resembled cones, as if they had been artificially deformed. But no traces of artificial deformation were found. Later, in the 1950s and 60s, British and French anatomists began discussing these findings at closed conferences, but there were almost no official publications. Why? These skulls weren't just found in Egypt. Similar ones appeared in Peru, Mexico, and the Caucasus, dating from 2,000 to 5,000 years ago. Different continents and cultures, same result. Some think elongated skulls come from infant head binding, like with the Maya. However, some Egyptian skulls have bone structures that suggest a different cause. The shape was always like that. If it isn't a disease, it's either another species or a forgotten part of ours. Some temple images reinforce this impression, depicting beings with elongated heads and special headdresses, perhaps not to decorate, but to conceal or highlight. If these skulls aren't fake, accidental, or deformed, then who were the Egyptians living with? Stromatolites are some of the oldest evidence of life on Earth, estimated to be about 3.5 billion years old. These ancient formations consist of thin layers of sedimentary rock that were created by colonies of cyanobacteria, primitive microorganisms capable of photosynthesis. Stromatolites are found worldwide, with some of the most famous and best preserved examples in Australia, particularly Shark Bay. Cyanobacteria that form stromatolites help change Earth's atmosphere by releasing oxygen through photosynthesis. This led to the so-called oxygen catastrophe, which, although it caused the mass extinction of anaerobic organisms, created conditions for the development of more complex forms of life, including animals and plants. Stromatolites, therefore, are considered the oxygen factories of ancient times. The mystery of the Herculaneum Scroll. Thanks to artificial intelligence and advanced X-ray technologies, scientists have managed to decipher the text of one of the ancient Herculaneum scrolls for the first time. These unique artifacts, which survived the eruption of Vesuvius in 79 AD, remained a mystery for almost 2,000 years. The scrolls were discovered in the 1750s among the ruins of a Roman villa, but after the disaster they turned into charred, fragile rolls that could not be unrolled without being destroyed. Most of them are kept in the National Library of Naples, while a few copies are in Oxford. In 2023, the Vesuvius Challenge competition was launched to find technologies for deciphering these texts. Recently, researchers announced a major breakthrough. Using high-energy X-ray scanning and artificial intelligence algorithms, the first image of the inside of the Oxford Scroll was created. Scientists have already identified several words, one of which is the Greek word for disgust. Although the text is still fragmentary, the method continues to improve. Thousands of similar scrolls are kept in Naples, and now researchers have hope for their deciphering. Alexander the Great's tunic. Archaeologists discovered a fragment of rare purple fabric in a tomb in Virginia, which may have been part of Alexander the Great's tunic and symbolized his power. The fabric was found in a golden vault next to the remains of a man buried with a golden wreath. The piece of fabric is a rare cotton for that time, dyed Tyrian purple, an expensive dye that was associated with royal power. Purple clothing was traditionally worn by Persian kings. After defeating Darius III, Alexander adopted this practice to highlight his divine status. Some historians believe that Philip II, Alexander's father, is buried in the tomb, while others think that the artifacts might have belonged to Alexander himself or his brother Philip II, Aridaeus, who inherited the royal regalia. Among other artifacts, a golden diadem, a scepter, and a wreath with oak leaves were found, items often mentioned in historical sources about Alexander's royal regalia. The tomb's frieze preserves hunting scenes, where researchers say Alexander wears a purple tunic. A gift from the fairies at Dunvegan Castle on the Isle of Skye. Under the glass hangs a cloth known by the MacLeod clan as the Amber Taxid, or magic banner. It appears as tattered silk, yellowish-brown with red dots, that used to be golden crosses, and is about 45 centimeters long. In the 20th century, it was sealed in an airtight display case to prevent the fabric from falling apart. Its origin is a matter of debate. The English archaeologist Alan Weiss suggested that it is Syrian or Greek silk, possibly even part of a relic. The clan leader replied simply, "Fairies gave it to my ancestor." There are three possible origins in one. After the crusade, the clan's ancestor followed a hermit's advice, defeated the spirit, daughter of thunder, and crafted a banner and staff from her belt with a spear. In the second version, a fairy stole a crying infant heir from the tower at night with a silk handkerchief. The next morning, her singing was heard in the hall. In the third version, the chieftain wed a fairy, who gave him a silk cloth on the ferry bridge when they parted, telling him it will grant the clan 3 victories, no more. The banner brought military luck, healed livestock, was used for a good harvest, and even to attract herring to the lake near Dangwagen. Legend says the power works only 3 times. After that, the cloth vanishes, leaving the clan unprotected. It is believed to have been unfurled twice in the 14th and 15th centuries, and once during the World War II. A rumor claims Churchill asked the MacLeods to raise the banner for the Allies, but the clan refused, saving it for another time. The banner now remains in a sealed display case. Between the tale of far-off silk and the family's belief in a fairy's gift, the museum curator sees a rare fabric with a complex clan history, an insurance policy that can't be wasted. In both cases, this piece of silk continues to do its job, preserving memory and creating the boundaries of what people who have a flag hanging over their hearth are willing to believe. With 3 chances. The first green mummy. In one of the tombs of the Egyptian necropolis in Abydos, archaeologists came across a sarcophagus covered on the inside with a thin green coating. At first they thought it was just traces of copper or mold, but analysis showed that it was actually a real mineral deposit of malachite. Over time, they soaked into the mummy's bandages and skin, giving the body a strange greenish tint. The burial is about 2,600 years old and contains a man identified by bones and artifacts, wealthy but not a pharaoh. In the tomb, they discovered amulets, incense vessels, and traces of oil used to cover the body before mummification. The copper salts in the mixture caused the mummy to turn green over centuries. For Egyptians, green wasn't just decorative, it symbolized Osiris's rebirth, vegetation, and eternal life. That's why even in this accidental chemical reaction, there's symbolism. Indeed, it became eternal not metaphorically, but literally. Copper compounds could have entered the tomb from jewelry, vessels, or pigments used in painting, but the result itself looks so unusual that the mummy received the unofficial name, the Green One. Metals that shouldn't exist. When we talk about ancient Egypt, bronze, copper, and gold come to mind. But some discoveries cast doubt on this. In tombs that were long considered to be fully explored, objects are sometimes found made from alloys, whose chemical composition does not match any known from that era. One such case happened back in the 1990s. In a cache near the Pyramid of Unas, a small plate was found, presumably a decorative element of a sarcophagus. It was made of zinc, nickel, and a small amount of aluminum, which wasn't mass-produced until the 19th century. It does not occur in its pure form in nature, and high temperatures and electrolysis are needed to obtain it. Where did it come from in ancient Egypt? Another example is a cylindrical object resembling a tooltip, found in the Saqqara area. Analysis showed the presence of rare earth metals, which are difficult to extract even today. The object showed wear, suggesting it was used for drilling or cutting stone or wood. There were also rings, plate fragments, and sarcophagus parts. In all cases, the composition is complex, and the technology for producing the alloy goes beyond ancient Egyptian metallurgy. However, official reports about these findings were either not published or limited themselves to the phrase, "The composition does not correspond to the era." Engineer from the future. In 1961, a professor searching old military records in Sibiu's archive accidentally found a manuscript. Amid the tables and calculations were odd diagrams, not crossbows or cannons, but multi-stage rockets, nozzle stabilizers, and references to fuel. It resembled 20th century technical documentation, yet was made in the 16th century. The author was Conrad Haas, an artillery master in Transylvania who managed barracks, drew diagrams, and wrote plainly. His treatise was titled How to Make a Good Rocket Capable of Lifting Itself into the Sky. Drawings, calculations, and rare explanations, as if he were truly trying to create something new. Little is known about his life. He was born in 1509, was an engineer, did not take part in battles, but created weapons. At the very end of the manuscript, he left a phrase unlike anything else. More peace and less war. Let the guns stay under the roof. Let there be no shot. Then the prince will save money, and the gunsmith will save his life. It's not a statement, just a quiet line at the bottom of the page. The first mammoth that might come back. The permafrost of Yakutia preserved the body of the mammoth as if it had just been taken out of a refrigerator. Yucca isn't just a mummified corpse. It preserved its brain, soft tissues, glands, and even living cell nuclei. Scientists have run initial experiments implanting nuclei into a mouse cell, which then showed activity. Cell division hasn't started yet, but this is just the beginning. Cloning is now a serious topic, and if it works, the mammoth could be the first species revived from extinction. It sounds like science fiction, but it's no longer fiction. This is a working laboratory. In 1965, in Hubei province, archaeologists opened a green tomb. Inside, they found a sword that had spent about 2,500 years in water. It was in a wooden scabbard, with no conservation, yet looked newly made. The blade was shiny, the pattern clear, and it sliced paper easily. An engraving bore the owner's name, Gu Jian, King of Yue. This sword is more than a weapon. Its precise craftsmanship and top-quality materials, from the alloy to the scabbard, set it apart. The main point is that it survived centuries of war and was forgotten, yet stayed intact. Scientists still don't know how. The fact that this item survived in working condition is remarkable. This sword shows how objects can preserve history better than words. The limb of Daniel Sickles and its adventures is one of the most famous exhibits at the National Museum of Health and Medicine in Washington. These are fragments of the leg of General Daniel Sickles, a participant in the United States Civil War. This exhibit attracts the attention not only of visitors, but also of Sickles himself, who repeatedly came to the museum to see his loss and impress his friends, including Mark Twain. Daniel Sickles is a controversial and scandalous figure, born in New York, who had a successful career in law and politics. His life was full of high-profile events, including his marriage to Teresa Baggioli, who was half his age. Sickles did not hide his affairs, even once bringing a prostitute to a state assembly meeting. A dramatic twist occurred when his wife had an affair with District Attorney Philip Barton Key. Upon discovering this, Sickles shot Key in front of the White House. The trial became a sensation. Sickles defended himself by claiming temporary insanity. This was the first time such a defense was used, and it was successful. In 1863, as a major general, Sickles took part in the Battle of Gettysburg, where he advanced his corps forward in violation of orders. This decision caused heavy losses. Even he lost a leg to a cannonball. The amputated limb was sent to a museum in a special box and became a main exhibit. Sickles not only kept his career but returned to politics. He lived a long life and died at the age of 94 in 1914. His leg is still on display in the museum, reminding people of his vivid and eventful life. Thanks to everyone who watched until the end, and especially to those who shared this video. Comment which discovery impressed you most. Thank you for watching. Goodbye, everyone.